much, and thank you, Representative Eligardo. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a couple more speakers. I'm now going to turn over the MC duties to my partner on the City Council, my partner in representing the back of the hill in Mission Hill. She is a freshman on the body, but she has been a remarkable leader over these last exceptionally difficult 11 months. And she really is the quarterback of convening all of us today. So please join me in welcoming Councilor Kenzie Bach.
Thank you, Matt. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. Before I make my own remarks today, I want to read a letter. It's brief, not as long as Nika's excellent remarks. But it is, I think, a really important letter to read into the record because it's from the building behind us. The Boston VA sent a letter in support of this event today. I really want us to acknowledge, we're here in support of our veterans today, and our veterans need it. And what the VA has written to say is the proposed cut of the Green Line to Heath Street will impede veterans' access to the Jamaica Plain facility. Our facilities had over 1,200 visits per day prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Currently, during the time of COVID-19, we are still seeing more than 700 face-to-face appointments a day for various services, including COVID-19 testing. Many of the veterans who we serve at VA Boston Healthcare System rely on the MBTA for transportation to their appointments in a timely fashion, especially veterans who cannot safely drive themselves. Likewise, our dedicated employees depend on public transportation to get to and from work. We will continue to work with our partners in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the City of Boston to ensure that veterans and our staff have a safe and dependable way to get to all the facilities within VA Boston Healthcare System. Sincerely, Vincent Niga, Medical Center Director of the VA Boston Healthcare System. So I just want to say today, I think that I've been thinking a lot. I used to take this train line out myself to visit my grandfather, who was a veteran who stayed in Sherrill House. Patrick Stapleton's been acknowledged, he's here. Sherrill House is a critical rehab facility and also a facility for people with Alzheimer's and dementia, and that was something my grandfather suffered from for several years, and I visited him and I got to know those essential workers who do that work and who take the tea every day. And I think it is so easy for us to be talking about essential workers these days and thinking that what we need to give is our praise and our lip service, when what we need to give is public transit and hazard pay and paid sick leave and, the real protections that you give when you recognize people are essential. And I think, I'm going to take this off, but I was wearing it. I think that we are good in this country sometimes about acknowledging service specifically in regard to our veterans. I think about the fact that we buried my other grandfather this year, and he got a burial space for free down at Bourne because of his service in Korea. Well, that same spirit that gives that free burial place, that acknowledges the fact of that service to our nation, needs to extend to things like public transit for the people who have sacrificed for our nation. And then, again, back to those essential workers, for people who sacrifice every day for all of us. I think that what the T is proposing today is nothing less than a death spiral. It will create a situation in which there isn't service, people can't rely on it, then you're going and taking a car instead. It will lead to higher asthma rates in our communities. It will shut people out of their jobs. It's just a disaster. And for this area that I represent specifically, if we think about the line from Brigham Circle to Heath Street, if you walk that right now, or you hop on one of these trolleys behind us and take it, you are going to pass housing for 1,000 or more seniors at Mission Park. You're going to pass significant low-income housing at Back of the Hill Apartments. You're going to pass 100 Huntington. We've got some folks who have mobility challenges who live there who rely on this line. We've got, as I said, Sherrill House, the VA hospital itself. I mean, this is a line that tells you why you need transit. And one of the things I've heard in the last 48 hours from people is, that last section of the E line, it's not really that good. Like, it sure could use some maintenance. It sure could use some redoing of the tracks beyond what they already did a month ago to actually make it easier to get on and off, make it safer for drivers. I couldn't agree more. But what we're talking about today is disinvestment, not investment. And the reality is that to add the current E-line riders to the users of the most used bus in the system, the 39, the one that again serves a ton of low-income people, people of color, it's a travesty, it's wrong-headed. If anything, the fact that we have a bit of redundant capacity here is critical in the time of COVID. And I just think that we have seen in Boston this story before. We still have neighborhoods, all communities of color, that lost their trains and never got them back. And we're here to say that that's not something we're going to let happen here. This is a city where we need to be investing more in public transit, not less. This is a city where we need to be talking about expanding our lines. And the idea that we would be talking about spending billions of dollars on the Green Line transformation at the other end of this line, and then we would say to people here in our lower income communities, oh, you don't need this trolley, it's redundant, it's not that important. Like, I just think that I think it's just deeply wrong-headed, and I certainly am joining the VA hospital today, our disabled American veterans represented by Coleman, the Carmen's Union, Cheryl House, and some of the groups I'm about to introduce, to say that this is unacceptable, and we urge you to roll back these cuts. So with that, I'm going to take over from Matt with a little bit of emceeing, and as the train rolls here, I just do want to introduce my council colleague, at-large city councilor Michelle Wu. She's been pushing for freeing the T and for greater investment in the T since before this current crisis, and her work has only become more critical in this crisis. I also think it's really important to note, I think sometimes people, they say, well, is having a free public transportation system like reasonable? Is that plausible? Actually, like, you're seeing the disaster right now. The reason we've got a budget hole is because the state doesn't support this like a public resource, right? It supports it like a user fee-based resource. And it's like, if we supported it like the public resource that it is, we wouldn't be in the place that we're in right now. And I think we just, and the reason that's important is because it's not actually optional, and that's what we're all here for today. Everybody, our lives in so many ways in our communities depend on this. So I'm grateful to Councilor Wu for her leadership on this, and I want to invite her to the platform.
Hi all. Public transportation is a public good. It should be reliable. It should be accessible. It should be free. And so we are standing here today thanks to our amazing colleagues in government, our essential workers who carry all of our essential workers back and forth, and these amazing residents and activists here to say we have had enough of the Baker administration's treatment of public transit and the MBTA. I want to be clear what is happening here. This is a short-sighted move to do the exact thing that would undercut and undermine and harm our economic recovery, as our small businesses up and down this stretch desperately need people to be able to come in, desperately need their workers to get there. This is a dangerous move that would crowd people together with less service, less options during a pandemic when we most need to space apart. Save our trolley! This is a cruel move, immoral, to concentrate the harms and the injustices of this pandemic on the very people who cannot afford to bear that. Communities who live along this stretch that our colleagues here represent. The veterans who are staying at the New England Center and Home for Veterans near Government Center, who are experiencing homelessness, for whom this is the only way to get to health care, this very trolley. It is unacceptable that we are having to rally yet again for a shameless move by the Baker administration to privatize our public resource. We've come together once too many times around our janitors that this administration has tried to push out and undermine with their move to privatize cleaning services on the T. We've come together to protest fare hikes again and again and again. Fares have gone up 41% since 2012 on the T. And we have come together to say we need, in this time of crisis, to protect our residents, to promote our economy, to make sure that we are putting public health and safety first. I just want to end with a big, big thank you to everyone here whose service makes our city work. And a final shout out, I see the signs, and I know we're here on this side, but save the Mission Hill Link. The MBTA is also planning on cutting funding this March to the Mission Hill Link, a crucial bus that goes around this neighborhood and serves so many seniors in the neighborhood. So lots of advocacy necessary here today. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Next up, I have the pleasure to introduce Jean-Luc Purite. Sorry, I just said that wrong. He'll correct me. But Jean-Luc is the president of the North American Indian Center of Boston, which, for those who don't know, is a crucial resource for folks of Native American Indigenous heritage from not just the city of Boston, but the entire region. It is located right here at this T-stop. And these are folks who use this line to get to use those services. There is also, as he'll tell you, a strong overlap between the Native community and the veteran community. And I just think it's really important today, again, for us to make visible who it is who is hit by cuts like this. And I'm so proud of the work that the North American Indian Center of Boston does. And Jean-Luc Purite is here with some other members of the organization, and I'm pleased to give him the floor.
Before I introduce myself, as is our practice at the North American Indian Center of Boston, I want to recognize the land that we stand on, the land which sustains us as the traditional indigenous territory of the Massachusetts Nation, who continue to this day, in part through their lineal descendants, the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapog. My name is Jean-Luc Purite. I'm originally from New Orleans. I'm a member of the Tunica-Biloxi tribe of Louisiana. I also want to recognize today that along the Gulf of Mexico, people are preparing once again for the landing of a hurricane. We are in multiple crises all the time. Excuse me, my mask is slipping, so I'm gonna do this. We're in multiple crises all the time. And many times when we talk about data equity, data sovereignty. Why is it that the Mass Department of Public Health still does not report American Indian and Alaska Native numbers when it comes to COVID cases? But today, we're not here to talk about statistics. We're here to talk about real people. And I want to just take this time to recognize one of our Native American veterans that is standing with us today, Mr. Joseph Dedham. I want to thank you for your service. And I want you all to understand the geography of where we are and the metaphor of where we are, because behind us we have the North American Indian Center of Boston at 105 South Huntington. We have the Cancer Center. And we have the VA. When I say there is a Black, Indigenous, person of color, elder, veteran, cancer patient, it does not take long for any of us to look in our families and our communities to know exactly who is affected by these austerity measures today. And so I just want to take the time to also recognize the space on the calendar. We're here on Veterans Day, in the middle of American Indian Heritage Month. But there's one thing that this country, this United States of America, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts excels at, and it is to tokenize our communities. And I'm talking about American Indian and Alaska Natives. I'm talking about veterans. I'm talking about people who are cancer patients, who are fighting for their lives. We have been at war in each circumstance, and it is not enough to have a day or a week or a month where we thank and say, oh, thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for being here. That is not enough. It is not in what we say. It is what we do. It is in the budget choices that we make. It is also in the austerity choices that we make. And so, North American Indian Center of Boston has a question for Secretary Pollock. Secretary Stephanie Pollock, can you hear me? Is this austerity measure, now knowing who it affects, is this austerity measure in line with the federal financial assistance that Mass DOT receives? When we look at broader impacts, further austerity measures, thinking about all those employees at Mass DOT and MBTA, how many of them are Black, Indigenous, person of color, elder, veteran, cancer patients? How many people have to be on the chopping block for this Commonwealth, for this system? It is high time that we move past an age of broken promises and tokenizing and saying thank you so much. And all at the same time on the other side of our mouth, we're going to say cut the budget. And we're going to take those questions to the State House. I want to thank Representative Elagardo. I want to thank Senator Chang Diaz for standing with us. We're going to take those questions to the federal government if we have to. I want to thank Representative Ayanna Pressley for being here with us today. And on behalf of myself, my staff, my Executive Director Raquel Halsey, my Vice President Mia Johnson, Gene Elkevich, one of our staff members who work tirelessly to provide services directly to the people that we are talking about today. I want to thank you all for your service. And I want to thank you all for standing with us here in solidarity. Takach, thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Luc. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce the City of Boston's Chief of Streets, Chris Osgood. Before he comes up here, I just want to say I want to thank the mayor, who has already expressed opposition to these cuts. I think the only way we are going to push back on them is if in Boston we are all united on this. And I appreciate the strong stand the mayor's administration has taken against it. I know we've got Shanice Pimentel here from the mayor's office of neighborhood services, and the Office of Neighborhood Services does all kinds of things in our neighborhoods, but being able to count on transit infrastructure, I mean, that's just the base layer of our neighborhoods. That's just, that's something that as a city, we can't do any of our normal operations without it. And I want to say that in my time as a counselor, I've only been here for 11 months, but what I have found again and again is that when I bring my transit-related issues to the Boston Transportation Department, that they are so ready to work with the T around this corridor, around making the experience better for all of our users, for our T-riders, for our bus riders, for our bicyclists, for our pedestrians. And I think that, think that there are times when that partnership is really strong, and then there are times like this where, as partners at a city level, we have to call our regional agency partners to account. And I really appreciate having in that fight for all the work that he does every day, Chris Osgood, Chief of Streets for the City of Boston.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see all of our elected officials, our community leaders, our veterans, all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your advocacy. As Councilor Buck said, I'm Chris Osgood. I have the honor of serving as Mayor Walsh's Chief of Streets. And on behalf of the Mayor and on behalf of the City of Boston, I want you to know that we stand with you. That we stand against the proposed cut of the E-Line service to East Street. As has been said, high quality, high frequency transit is essential. It is an essential way that we get workers to the VA hospital, patients to the VA hospital during the course of this public health pandemic. It's high quality, high frequency transit service that's going to be essential for all of our residents across our entire region, particularly our lowest income residents, as we transition from a public health crisis into recovery to make sure that we are all accessing the opportunities and contributing to the opportunities of our region. It's high quality and high frequency transit that's at the bedrock of our climate goals, our equity goals, our economic growth goals. And the proposed cut that we are all standing against today is emblematic of this. Now, on no day should we be talking about reducing service to a veterans hospital. That is especially true during a public health crisis on Veterans Day. And thinking about the year ahead that should be marked by reopening and economic recovery. We cannot take away a one-seat ride from Mission Hill residents in the downtown core or people across our entire region to be able to access the opportunities here.
Save our trolley!
Now, without question, the MBTA faces real and significant challenges, and our first response has to be working together as a community, local, state, and federal. Work together to make sure that we are saving our trolley, that we are keeping the MBTA, that we're making sure the E-Line keeps running to Heath Street today, that we work on extension plans to Canary Square tomorrow, and that's for the entire region, that the MBTA is working for all of us. So thank you so much for being here today. Look forward to the work ahead.
Thank you, Chief Osgood. All right, next up, we've got two more speakers, and the penultimate one is Senator Sonia Chang Diaz. She needs no introduction. She represents this area. She inspired me to hold stickers in the rain for her in her first race in 2006. And so she's somebody I've been looking up to in public service ever since, and I think that she is, well, you'll all hear from her. She brings a heart to this work that we really value here at Mission Hill. So, thank you.
You guys hear me? I got it. All right. It's good to have a bullhorn back in my hand. So, I saw two signs as I was walking up to this location. I saw one outside the Sherrill House. It said, "Heroes work here." Heroes work here. Heroes work all up and down this block. Heroes work here. Heroes seek help here. And we know how hard it is for those who have lived a life of service and heroism to seek out that help. And what a moral travesty it is for us to make it harder, to put up more barriers when those heroes are seeking out our help. The second sign that I saw as I was walking here, and this is a little more in your face, but I bet it was on a car of somebody who's standing here today. You'll shout out if this is your car. It said, "Tax the rich." And I'm going to tell you guys some truths. There is a narrative that is going on in the building that I proverbially work in, because we're all working remote now, but the state house that I work in, and that Representative Eligardo, who we hope is healing up and following those doctor's orders, works in, as we are undertaking this budget debate right now. And the narrative is this: there's a $3.5 billion hole in the state budget relative to the revenue that we thought was going to be coming in this year because of the downward spike in tax revenues because of the pandemic, right? This is a narrative you guys are all more or less familiar with, even if you don't know the exact numbers. But the next step in that narrative says, we have found a way to fill that hole. So actually, it's all okay. We're going to take some one-time revenue from here, we're going to take some one-time revenue from here, and we're going to plug that hole. And there won't be any major cuts. But we know, as we are standing right here, that we are facing down some major cuts. And I have to tell you that there's a total cognitive dissonance going on at the state level about what the reality is on the ground. Remembering the fact that we are living in a public health crisis, that the needs are not the same needs as last year. They're not the same needs that will necessarily be there after this pandemic is gone. But we have needs unlike we have ever seen before. And the project before us as a responsive government is not simply to preserve the status quo. Even if there weren't cuts happening, which there are. So I need to ask your help. I need to ask you to be loud and clear and be in touch. Obviously, you know, I'm here, I hear you, you know. And Nika's here in spirit and she knows. But to be in touch with your other state leaders, with the governor, let him know, first of all, we are not buying that bill of goods, that cuts are not happening. You say that you put forth a budget that avoids severe cuts, come out and see what we see in Mission Hill. Secondly, you need to be loud and clear that yes, we do have heroes that work here. And as the president of the North American Indian Center said, as you heard before, I don't know what's going on. We might have killed the battery in this thing, guys. That's how much good of a speaking program we have.
What kind of batteries does it take?
Girl, I don't know.
They get the big ones.
You need to be loud and clear that we are feeling severe cuts, that the needs are not being met, and that we need to see a pandemic profits tax. Because don't you believe it when people tell you that there is not enough money to pay for the services to these heroes to get them to work in a safe manner? Don't you believe it when people tell you implicitly that we have to cut our heroes loose and that they have to fend for themselves to seek out the help that they need? Because the truth is, in the 8 months since the very beginning of this pandemic, not even a year, in the 8 months since the beginning of this pandemic, 20 billionaires in Massachusetts, you guys got to hear this, I'm going to make sure this is working, 20 billionaires who are Massachusetts residents since the beginning of this pandemic, their net worth has increased by $17 billion. That is more than 5 times the whole in the state budget. So don't you believe it when people tell you that we do not have the money in Massachusetts to fix this problem. We do. We need to go get it. We need to follow our values, follow our moral conviction that we are in this together, and we need to call BS on people when they are honoring our veterans on Veterans Day and pretending that they don't see what's going on here in Mission Hill. Thank you so much for being there. Get on your emails, get on your phones, and cure that cognitive dissonance. Thank you so much. Alright, testing. Is it still working? You can hear it? Alright. So, we just have to hold this button down, but I do have backup batteries. We've come to the final speaker in our program. Talk about someone who needs no introduction. But, you know, you may not know that, you probably do, but you may not know that Congresswoman Presley founded the Future of Transportation Caucus down in D.C. And I think that's emblematic of how she's bringing the problems we're talking about today all the way to D.C. And there is no question that we are going to need federal funds to support our vital transportation systems in this country, including the MBTA. There is no question, and we hope with President-elect Biden that we're going to get there. But the thing that's been giving me hope in this crisis, even before that, because it's strange to be a local official in a pandemic like this and find that you don't have a partner in the federal government on so many fronts. It's strange and it's hard. But even all through that, I've always known that we have a champion fighting for us in Washington.
Yes.
And that champion is Diana Presley, the one and only, and we're so glad to have her here with us today.
Can you guys hear me if I just speak?
Yeah.
No? I think I have makeup all over my face, so I'm not gonna do that. Hold on. Can you guys give it up for Kenzie bringing spare batteries? Let me show you where. Okay, hold on here. All right. I'm worried I might have makeup all over my face. So don't make that camera too tight. Okay. All right. Is that better? Okay. All right. So, we have been bearing the gravity and the heart of really 3 pandemics. The coronavirus, the economic hardship that it has wrought, resulting in unprecedented food insecurity, unprecedented unemployment, many families on the precipice of eviction, and then the 3rd pandemic. The only thing that the coronavirus could not kill, racial injustice. And the confluence of these 3 things, and in the midst of this unprecedented hurt, in the failure of this federal administration, this GOP-led Senate carrying the water for that administration, failing to provide comprehensive relief to mitigate your hurt, to meet the scale and scope of this crisis. What you all have done through collective care and mutual aid, you have stood in the gap. These municipal leaders have stood in the gap. These state leaders have stood in the gap. The federal government has failed you.